Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more home defense testing. And today we've got another really interesting load combination to try out. And I think this one might be rather appealing to a decent number of people. It might just sit kind of right in the sweet spot and be a really solid option. But we'll see how it patterns. Now, this lineup of shells we're going to be running has usually done very nicely, especially in a shotgun platform like we've got today. So we'll see how it does and if it really is one of those actually enticing combinations or not. But first up, for the shells that we're running, I brought out some of these. These are the Federal Premium Personal Defense 410 handgun loads. These ones are a 410 3-inch 9-pellet load of 4 buck at about $9.50 from a handgun platform, but we're going to be running it through a shotgun. Typically, they're 11 to 1200 or so range from what I've seen, running the handgun-oriented shells through a shotgun like we've got today. Now, this is pretty interesting because these shells, even though they're designed or intended for a handgun application, they make phenomenal shotgun defensive loads as well. Some people don't like the idea of 410 in a defensive scenario. Me, I really do. They're lighter weight. A lot of times they're smaller guns. They're easier to maneuver. They have almost no recoil to them at all. They're quieter, so you're not going to blow your eardrums out as bad inside of a house anyway. And even though they may not have as many pellets in the shell, you're still getting buckshot performance out of it, even if it is in a 410 shell. Like, this is 9 pellets of 4 buck, and if we're getting the typical 1200 out of these that we would with a 12 gauge 4 buck shell, then it's still a 4 buck pellet moving at the same velocity as everything else. You're still going to have the energy and penetration to do the job, and you've got a few less pellets to worry about scattering everywhere. There's just not a whole lot to dislike other than the lower pellet count. And myself, I really like 4 buck in those defensive applications. You've got enough energy, you've got enough penetration, it gives you a couple more pellets to work with as well, and you may not get over penetration like you would with a slug or potentially even double-aught and stuff like that, but it's way better than a birdshot load. So we'll see how these perform and if they're actually something that a lot of people may consider using, because I think we've got some good potential here. So as for the setup we're running them in today, those are technically a handgun oriented load, but we've got a shotgun platform to run them in. They have traditionally worked really well in a shotgun orientation. Today we've got a Mossberg 500. Technically this is the turkey edition, but all that means is it's camouflage, optics ready, and has changeable chokes. Nothing special otherwise than that. But this is a Mossberg 500. I've got a Simmons red dot on top. It's got a 24-inch barrel, and for the choke, I have a cylinder bore screwed into the gun. So no constriction whatsoever. This isn't a tactical-oriented shotgun, but I wanted to try and simulate that the best I could. So cylinder bore it is, and we'll see how it actually performs for us. So as for our test today, we're running everything the same as we usually do with these defensive-oriented tests. We're going to take 5 shots. Those shots are going to be at 7, 10, 15, 20, and 25 yards. So that way we cover all of our bases, from in the same room as somebody to down the hallway, and even to out on the porch or the driveway or out in the yard. Obviously, those little bit longer ranges are going to come down to a case-by-case situation, whether you should or should not take that shot, but we at least need to see what our pattern does at those little longer ranges so we know if we have a limitation on range capability or not. And of course, I've got the chrono as well to be getting our velocity average. So let's get you guys a view of those targets. We'll take all of our shots and see how these 410 handgun 4 buck loads can actually perform. Alright, so we'll take a quick look at our chrono numbers before we look at our targets. We have a boss claim of 950, but that is for a handgun platform. And like I suspected, we are a noticeable bit above that, right in the typical buckshot velocity range. We had 1250, 1342, 1336, 1297, and 1362 for an average at 1317. So maybe not the most consistent velocities, but still right around 1300 or so is plenty enough. It's still a $4 pellet at 1300, regardless of if it comes from a 12 gauge or a 410. You just have a few less of them flying down range, but per pellet performance is still going to be the same either way at that velocity. But how did our intruders actually fare down there? Let's go check it out and see. All right, so here we are down at our targets, and we definitely see some rather interesting results here for sure. We'll start up close and personal inside the house, in the same room or down the hallway. Obviously, both of these intruders are having a very bad day. On the right, with our 7-yard target, we have a 4.5-inch spread of pellets, but that's only 8 pellets. The hole you see below it, that is where the wad went through the paper, and we'll see this trend continue on as we get out in the longer ranges as well. We have at least one pellet stuck in the wad on every single shot, and I actually did find one of these wads with a pellet stuck in it as well, and we'll look at that here in a second. So don't love that that is consistently happening, but for what it's worth, I mean, still, you've got the size of your fist right there through the center of the chest cavity, and those spray painted torsos are very close to regulation 18x30 size, so that is plenty capable. And same story over with our 10-yard intruder. We open it up a little to 6.5 inches. That one only shows 7 pellets, so we may have had 2 of them still stuck in the wad, or one that went through the wad hole, but still everything is right there in a nice clump center mass. So both of those are perfectly capable patterns. I wouldn't want to stand in front of them for sure, because it's still a $4 pellet at 1300 feet per second. It's not going to be very nice. But now moving over to 15 yards, anywhere from here on out is going to be a case-by-case scenario whether you should or should not take this shot. Obviously, we're getting to the distances where it would be out to the driveway or out in the yard somewhere. So you make the decision on whether these are good or bad shots to take, but we needed to know our range limitations and what it would do at those farther ranges as far as pattern goes. At 15 yards, we now open it up to 11 inches of spread. We still only see 8 pellet holes there, even though this is a 9 pellet load, because we have a pellet stuck in the wad. That's the big wad hole right there, and typically 410 wads don't really punch through these layers of paper, and there's a bunch of paper stacked there as well. So that trend continues. Still don't love that there's a pellet stuck in the wad, but pattern wise, everything is still right through the torso where you'd want it to be, but we do pick up a flyer over there off the right as well. Now moving over to 20 yards, we still continue the same opening up of the pattern. We're now at 14.75 inches for these 8 pellets, so we still have 1 pellet stuck in the wad. It just didn't hit the paper anywhere where we can see it on here. But of the 8 pellets we do have, still everything is right within your typical torso size. Even at 20 yards with a cylinder bore choke, I wouldn't want to be the one on the receiving end of it for sure. And finally, here we have our 25-yard target. I kind of ran out of paper, so it doesn't look the prettiest, but we can still see what we need to see. We have still 8 pellets out of the 9 here on the target. Of those 8 pellets, we have a 19-inch spread. Definitely a little hotter zone down here in the bottom right, with a couple flyers up there at the top left, and still 1 pellet stuck in the wad. But pattern capability-wise, if you were put in a situation where you had to use these, and the shot range was a little farther than in the same room as somebody, you've got a good enough pattern to at least slow down, if not stop, somebody that you need to stop out to 25 yards or so. And this is a cylinder bore choke as well. You may even be able to get tighter patterns through a little tighter choke constriction if you're running these in a shotgun platform, but very interesting results nonetheless. You've got good enough patterns, even to 25 yards, to do the job. So now let me show you this wad that I found with an actual pellet stuck in it. Alright, scratch that. I actually found 2 of the wads, and sure enough, both of them look exactly the same. You can see these loads do have a full-length wad, and they are buffered and copper-plated, which really helps these perform better than most other 410 buckshot-oriented loads. But sure enough, they've got a little buffer material and a pellet stuck down in the base of each one of them there. You can see that nice, shiny copper pellet kind of smashed on the top where there was pellets stacked on top of it. Exact same in both situations. Neither one of them blew out of the back. They just kind of got jammed in the thicker base part of it down there at the bottom. Don't love that necessarily. I don't think they designed it to do that. But let me dig one of these pellets out here just so you guys can see it in my hand a little better while we actually are looking at the pellets. Okay, here is one of those pellets that I dug out. You can see that flat spot where a pellet was sitting on top of it when it was actually fired. But otherwise than that, nice round copper plated 4-buck pellet. And this is the wad it came from. You can see a buffer material stuck down in there. I actually think it's a buffer material problem. That stuff was hard as a rock down in the bottom. So I think the buffer is actually what held that last pellet in there, because the wad itself down in there looks just fine. It's not like it tried to push through the plastic or anything. So very interesting here to see that that's happening. And I also brought that pellet in here to the inside bench to measure it and weigh it for those curious. But just sitting here and editing and thinking about it, it may be because of the extra velocity we're getting from our shotgun as well. These are obviously a handgun oriented shell. Maybe that extra velocity kind of forced everything into the base of that wad and packed it tightly in there. Definitely a possibility. But for the outer actual round diameter of this pellet, it's sitting right at 0.25. A 4-buck pellet is 24 caliber, so it did get squished a little bit and actually made the pellet a little bit fatter around than what it typically would be. And as far as the flat side measurement goes, it's right at 0.19, so it definitely got squished a little bit flatter that way as well. And as far as the pellet weight goes, it was right at 19.4 grains. The typical average 4-buck pellet is roughly 20 grains, so we're right there at about what we should be. And we can actually calculate some energies and stuff off of this as well. So with that being a 9 pellet load, if we use the 19.4 grains as our average weight, that gives us 174.6 grains of total pellet weight in the shell. And if we plug that into a ballistic calculator, using the weight of each pellet at our average velocity, we get 75 foot-pounds per pellet of muzzle energy. Multiply that out times 9 pellets. It's about 675 foot-pounds of muzzle energy for the entire 9 pellet load. So that's plenty enough energy to do the job if you put the pellets where they need to be. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that performance right there out of these shells? Definitely some rather interesting results. I definitely wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of these, that's for sure. A 4-buck pellet at 1300 feet per second is not going to be a very nice time for whoever does receive it. So this is a very interesting kind of back and forth dilemma right here. This load from a shotgun platform would absolutely work in a home defense scenario, no question about it. But the load itself clearly is doing a little bit of weird stuff. I don't love that the pellets are getting stuck in the base of the wad. Would they do that in a handgun platform? Maybe, maybe not. You'd have a little less velocity, so that could be a factor here as well, potentially. So I'm not a fan of that, but even having 8 pellets of 4-buck at over 1300 is going to be effective. You've got the pattern performance to do it as well. Even all the way out to 25 yards, it's still good enough. But obviously, if you're in the same room as somebody, down a hallway, maybe out on the porch or in the garage or barn or something, like we see here with these ranges, it's certainly capable, and you've got a nice pattern. You're keeping everything right where it needs to be, right through the chest cavity and torso, so it would certainly work. It's just going to be a case of personal preference. Do you want to use 410? If you don't mind using 410 for defensive stuff, what kind of shell do you want to use? Whether it be a slug or double triple-aught buck or something like the 4-buck loads or birdshot even, wouldn't be my choice, but these 4-buck shells aren't a terrible option. But you'll have to let me know your thoughts about it down in the comments. Is this about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these 410 handgun defense loads? And if so, what kind of results have you seen, whether it be from a handgun platform or a shotgun? Is this a combo you would actually run as a home defense setup? Or are you still the regular old 12 gauge double-aught buck type of guy? Or is this kind of what you're looking for? It intrigues you. You've got enough pellets, enough pellet performance with a lighter gun and lighter recoil that you really like running a setup like this? And maybe what other combos do you want to see us run in these home defense scenarios, whether it be in 410 or 12 gauge or anything else? Or what else do you want to see us do with these 410 4-buck shells? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, you have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All the information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.